Okay, welcome back, and I'm going to do part two now of gangster guns. And basically, we've been building up to submachine guns. We've talked in the first gangster gun film. We've talked about the need for more firepower in a confined space, which is what submachine guns really did. That's their job. That's what they came into their own, because it was pistol ammunition. The difference between pistol ammunition and rifle ammunition is pistol ammunition is relatively low powered. Okay, it's effective at close range, but a pistol has no range. You know, you can't pull a pistol out and shoot people a long way away because the bullet won't even get there, let alone be able to hit anything with any accuracy. Whereas the rifle bullet will go a long way, and trained snipers, you know, they can hit things at 1,000 yards away or more. But that's a separate art. I'm not talking about sniping. Okay, we're building up to submachine guns, and now we've talked about fully automatic bursts. In my last video, I was talking rapid fire or fully automatic bursts, and the problem was the fully automatic burst wasn't controllable. It's panic mode. I mean, if you've got something coming towards you, you can hit full auto, point in the direction and pull the trigger. Most of your bullets will probably miss, but you might get a lucky one and take your target, your enemy down. Or this is how it worked anyway. Full automatic, they soon realised, well, we're just wasting loads of ammunition. Ammunition's expensive. I know it's very small expense, you know, compared to the army and the amounts of money that they waste in other ways. But, you know, ammunition, every little penny counts. So, especially with the British, you know, when it comes to saving money, they try to save money everywhere in every department throughout. So if you're pointing a gun and firing it, and we've proved this with the Bolo Mauser there, the M712. We've proved it in the small range I've got in the back garden there in the backyard, that 50% of your ammunition is wasted. Okay, it doesn't hit the target. The other 50% does hit the target, and that's in full auto, in a semi-controlled burst on the target. It's trying to hold it on the target, and it's all gone too quickly. With that particular airsoft gun, it works on a CO2 cylinder, and it holds 20 balls in the magazine, and they're gone in 2 seconds. I can refill it with another 20, and they're gone in 2 seconds, and then the cylinder's out. So I'm going through a lot of gas, and I'm going through a lot of balls, and only 50% are hitting the target. And that's it. What was the range we were looking at? 5-6 yards, something like that. All the way back into the kitchen was 10 yards, but we were losing the accuracy at 10 yards. Single shot we were getting it, but in a fully auto burst, no, we weren't doing it. So going back to the First World War, then experimented with Lugers and Mausers and all the different kinds of pistols, which fired really fast, and they couldn't control them. They had the same problem. I mean, you can make a pistol fire fully auto, but are you going to hit anything? That's the question. And the answer is no, probably not. You're probably going to hit 50%, and 50% of the bullets are going to get wasted. So you're going to hit things you didn't intend to hit, which may be a bad thing, depending on the scenario. Anyway, the very first submachine gun was developed by a guy called Hugo Schmeiser, and it was the MP18, and that was the Bergman and Hugo Schmeiser. And this is it. I've got an airsoft version of it right here. Don't know if you can see that. This is an airsoft version. Okay, this fires little balls. Now in this particular one, I'll just show you the magazine there. Magazine holds 150 balls. Okay. This is electric, so there's a battery. There's a battery that goes in here. I've got a little wire in the back there. So I haven't got a battery with it. I've ordered a battery. I thought I'll wait for it to arrive before I'll order the battery, because the battery comes separately. And the charger, it's very heavy. It's proper wood, this one, and it's all proper steel. But it's an authentic replica of the Bergmann Hugo Schmeisser MP18, which came into service in the German army in 1918. They did have the Luger magazine, which came in at this mad angle, and they later got rid of that and put the straight stick magazine in there, which was developed by Schmeisser himself, which would later feature on the upgrades to this, because they upgraded them in 23, 28, I think, 35, and they just basically modified the same gun. It set the standard, really, because it's a tube. It's a very simple gun. It's heavy, and in theory, when you've got a fully automatic burst, the barrel's not wandering off everywhere because it's so heavy. It's controllable. It does take a bit of practice when you're firing fully automatic bursts, but in a heavier gun, you stand a better chance of controlling that a lot better. Although this was a particularly well-made gun. You can see this configuration of the back. This doesn't work because this isn't a real one, but if this was a real MP18, you'd push that forward with your thumb, and there's a hinge just here. So the whole thing would tip up away from the wooden stock, and then you could get access to the spring and the bolts. It was a very simple gun. It had a barrel which comes up to here. Then you had a bolt which is fixed, and it sort of locks in the back position. Simple blowback. It's actually very, very simple. If you had some brief gun making equipment, so like a lathe and a milling machine, the simplest gun you could ever make would be a submachine gun with a simple blowback action like this. And this set the standard actually for submachine guns for many, many years to come. In fact, the only thing they got wrong really was putting the magazine sticking out the side like that. Some guns had them on the right, some on the left. Some had them coming up from the top, so they were gravity fed, and others had them coming out the bottom. I think the bottom was probably the way they should have gone, but they didn't. They configured it like this. Okay. And lots of other countries looked at this and thought, ooh, and they copied it. The Italians brought some out that were very similar, Berettas, I think. The British even copied this. They just reverse engineered it and called it the Lanchester, and big heavy gun. But they were very well made, you know, the wood stocks. I think after the war, the Germans weren't allowed to produce them, so the company just moved to Austria and carried on making them, and they modified them. They did all kinds of modifications to them, and eventually they finished up with the MP38, which had the magazine on the bottom, and it had the folding stock and a pistol grip. And the Germans loved them. They thought they're great, we'll have them, and they produced the MP40, which was a cheaper version of the MP38. And the same thing applied with the Americans. You know, they produced the Thompson, the early Thompson, which was a lot better made than the later, the 28, and then the M1A1, which was the Second World War version. So if you were a collector of Thompsons, you'd want to get your hands on the first one, the early one that just missed the First World War, because that was a quality build gun which was more expensive to produce than the later productions, where they tried to save money and reduce the quality so they could churn them out faster. So the MP18, this is the first submachine gun in the world. The British took it to the extreme when they built the Sten gun, which was basically the same thing but everything was stripped off it to make it as cheap and as nasty and as quick to produce as possible. The wood stock, for example, had gone. They put some sort of skeleton stock on there and they stripped everything off. Only the magazine was the only thing really that remained, because they used the same magazine by Schmeiser, the double stack single feed magazine that they put on the MP18. The British had on the Lanchester and the Sten gun, and the Germans had the MP40. They all use the same magazine, so you could take one magazine out, or you find some dead Germans that you could use their magazines, and similarly they could use British Sten gun magazines, which were just copies of the Schmeiser. In fact, it actually had Schmeiser written on the magazine because he designed the magazine, but he didn't really have anything to do with the MP40 later. But this, with the side magazine, this is the one. This is the true submachine gun, the very simple, basic submachine gun that Hugo Schmeiser came up with. This was the Gangster gun. This was the one that menaced more people than any other submachine gun in the world. Really, more people were murdered with these German guns than ever with the Thompson. But the Thompson is the legendary gangster gun, isn't it? The 1928 Thompson, the Chicago piano, because you got these gangsters like Al Capone, and I'm sure there's a load. If you're an American, you'll know all the names. And these people had the chief of police in their pocket on the payroll, and the mayor and people like that. And they got their hands on the Thompson because the Thompson had been produced for the Second World War. Beautifully made gun, 50 round magazine, and it was rapid. Could shoot a lot of people really quickly. And gangsters got their hands on these guns, whether they stole them or bought them or whatever. And they put the submachine gun on the map because the Germans were being relatively quiet with theirs. But the Thompson burst onto the scene with the likes of Al Capone, and you had other gang families. I don't know if they were the mafia in those days. They might have been, I don't know. But they were gangsters anyway, and other gangsters would try to pay the mayor more money and have them on their payroll, and so they'd go round and they'd shoot other gangsters with these gangster guns that they were called, the Thompson. So it became a legend. All of a sudden the cops had to have Thompsons to keep up with the gangsters, because they'd pull a little revolver out. And the gangsters there with the 45 Thompson, you got no chance, have you? So the cops all of a sudden had to start buying Thompsons, and so everyone's running around with Tommy guns and driving around in cars and drive-by shootings, and it's a big power struggle. But at the end of the day, it was a power struggle for crime families in charge of a city, struggling for power. I like to say Chicago because that's probably the most notorious, but I'm sure they did it in lots of other places as well. And then you got people like Bonnie and Clyde going around robbing banks. I mean, you go into a bank with a submachine gun, and even today, if you did that in England, if you walked into a bank with a submachine, a real one, even if you didn't fire it, you're looking at getting 14 years to life just for carrying it, just for having it in the bank. That's before you get charged with the bank robbery. That's just for having a submachine gun and taking it on a job. That's how serious it is. Because they don't like submachine guns. They've got a big. They had their fingers badly burned when the crime families in the United States got hold of Thompsons. Even to this day, in the United States, I mean, people have the right to bear arms and that. And if you've got a Thompson or a full automatic weapon of any description, that is more tightly controlled than a normal single shot handgun. I mean, in fact, you can buy brand new Thompsons these days, single shot, rapid fire, but they're not full auto. That's fine, not a problem. But you want to go and get an original collector's item, an original Thompson full auto from the day, they're much more tightly controlled. They're very, very careful who they give licenses to. You can still get licenses in the States, but I mean, you can get them in the UK, but it's very, very difficult to get a licence for a fully automatic weapon in the UK. Normally you'd go to the police station for a firearms licence, and they will issue you with a firearms licence if you pass all the criteria, the tests and what have you, and you tick all the boxes. But if you wanted a full automatic machine gun, submachine gun, heavy machine gun, you cannot go to the police for that. You've got to go to the government, to the Home Office. This is a Section 1 prohibited firearm we're talking about. So if you want a licence for that, you've got to have a very, very, very good reason. And even then, that's no guarantee they'll give you a licence for it. But that's how the law is. So you don't need a licence to buy an airsoft gun on Amazon that look like the real thing, but they're not. They're BB guns that fire little plastic balls. Well, you can put steel ones in there. I've got a 1911, a green gas, and you put it's like a lighter. The gas reservoir is like a lighter. You know, there's the clippers. So you've got to refill it like a lighter to fill the reservoir. I put some steel BBs in, they just dropped out the end of the barrel and bounced along the floor. Didn't even make it to the target. So some guns you can put the steel BBs in, and others you just got to stick to the plastic ones. But yeah, any collector, you can buy these imitation replicas, and they do the part. You can shoot them, you can play with them, you can talk about them. But the cost of one of these, a real MP18, from the day, even if it hasn't been converted to take the stick. I mean, if it has the original snail drum magazine, which some of them did, some of them still have. Super collectible, worth a lot of money for sure. And then, talking about gangster guns, the British didn't want any. They didn't want them. No, we don't want them. Until they reluctantly copied the MP18, the Lanchester. They bought Thompsons from the Americans. The Thompson was a very expensive gun. It was about $200 each in those days, which was a lot of money. $200 isn't much today, but going back to the 1930s, that was a lot of money. You could buy a lot of things for a couple of $100. And so there's this theory that the Thompson is notorious because it was in Hollywood, it was in all the movies, it was the gangster gun, and everyone associated the Thompson with gangsters, although the Nazis came along, and the Nazis were really nasty gangsters. They really were. They were around at the same time as Al Capone and the gangsters that we were talking about just then with the Thompsons. And they had their own machine guns, and along came the MP38, which was the one we see in all the war films, because they looked at that and they said, this was a Nazi era gun. They said, yes, we like them, we'll have them. And they made the MP40, which was the same gun but made cheaper, so they could manufacture them faster. So out of the two guns, if you were a collector, the MP38 would be the one to get your hands on. And you can buy, in the United States, you can buy replicas that are brand new MP38s, single shot. They don't fire fully auto. And they retail for about, to give you an idea, about $4,000 US. And it's a single shot carbine. So, even the replicas cost a lot of money. So if you can get your hands on a real one from the period that's been deactivated, and they cost a lot of money. They cost stupid amounts of money. So we're moving on to the MP40, which was the German Nazi submachine gun. Nice design, good gun. I like it a lot. It's one of my favourites. The Nazis were real gangsters because they didn't just take over the city and have the mayor in their pocket. They took over the whole country, and then they tried to invade the world and take over the world. So these were more serious gangsters than ever the mafia were. The mafia look after their own and their own families. They didn't have dreams of world domination and religious genocide and things like that. I mean, more people were murdered with German submachine guns than ever with the Thompson, I would imagine, because of that very scenario that we look at. So realistically, I think that the German gun was the bigger gangster gun, more significant. And they're highly collectible. They're very, very sought after, because the Nazis, as you know, were crushed, absolutely crushed. They wouldn't give up. They wouldn't surrender. They were just crushed, and the whole country was crushed with them. So there's nothing surviving from that era, apart from a few souvenirs that people picked up at the time, which means that they're rarer, and so the value of them shoots right up. Whereas Thompsons, they've probably got thousands of them still in America. You can buy them second hand, and you can buy kits where they cut them up. They cut them up into little pieces, and I think the receiver is the main part of the gun. So if you cut the receiver up into little bits, you can buy the whole gun all chopped up as a kit, and you can make your own gun out of it. But you can't have a full auto, you can only have single, and there's all kinds of things. And they probably sold loads of them off, and loads of copies went around the world. The Sten gun was made in all kinds of different other countries. Then the Russians brought out they looked at the MP18, and they brought their version of it out. They copied it and brought, but you can't beat the simple blowback action on a spring. That is so simple and so cheap to manufacture if you manufacture it in a really cheap way, like the Sten gun. You couldn't get much cheaper and nastier than the Sten gun, but it worked. It really did work. And then the Sterling came out after that, which they just modified the Sten gun, made the magazine more reliable, curving magazine, double stack, double feed, a lot better. But again, they put the magazine sticking out the side. Why didn't they put it on the bottom, like the MP5? The MP5, Heckler & Koch MP5, probably one of the best submachine guns that ever made. To toss up between that and the Uzi. And the Uzi went in the bottom. And they were probably the best submachine guns ever produced. Until they just got phased out. One day, you know, the Germans produced the assault rifle, which was a rifle that could be folded up quite small and used as a submachine gun, but the rounds were obviously shitloads more powerful than the pistol ammunition that they used in the old submachine guns. So today we're looking at assault rifles which do the job of the submachine gun as well as the job of the rifle, all in one gun. You don't need two separate ammunitions, two separate guns. You just use the same gun. Although a lot of the guns still don't fire full automatic. They'll fire bursts, which are more accurate and less wasteful, because even these AK-47s that go on full auto, you see these Arabs and people like this using them, and they're closing their eyes, putting them round the corner of a wall and firing them blind. And if you just point it and pull the trigger, it goes and most of the ammunition goes in the air, misses them. The first bullet that you fired might go in somewhere near the target, but the rest just went off into the air. So full automatic, it's panic mode, in my opinion. It's panic mode, you know, when you, and I say, in a room full of people, you burst in with a fully automatic weapon, you're going to take out everybody in that room. You really are. They are absolutely deadly in close quarter fighting, in from room to room, building to building. And both sides have got submachine guns. I mean, oh my God, the death toll will be horrendous just trying to clear one street. So that concludes my talk of part 2 on gangster guns.